Welcome to the Behaviorist Book Club. We're a community of busy research-focused behavior analysts just trying to stay on top of the literature in our field. This is JABA in One Take, volume number 54, issue number 4, the last article of the fall edition. It is almost the holiday season. It is the holiday season, guys. This one is by Romer and colleagues. It is entitled The Influence of Observation and Ratings on Implementation of Discrete Trial Instruction. Before we hop in, remember you can find me at my website, www.behavioristbookclub.com, as well as my Facebook and Twitter. All right, guys, let's hop into this final article. And I am happy to say that when I read this article, I read my articles in the morning. I wake up early. I wake up at about 5 to read, and when I finished this article, I immediately sent an email to some of the RBT trainers who I work with. These are RBTs who are more experienced, and I rely on them a lot to help teach other RBTs, the new hires that I bring in, the ropes. And I shared this email at like 6 in the morning. I was like, sorry to bother you, but you've got to read this article. This completely, I wouldn't say changed the way I think of training, but opened up a whole new efficiency pathway that I had not thought of before. And that just gets me real excited. So the first thing that they note is that the children with autism need a lot of one-on-one instruction. This has proved essential in the teaching of skills, in the implementation of ABA. And one of the struggles that ABA clinics have is training the new therapists, the new RBTs, stands for Registered Behavior Technicians if you're not part of our field, to be highly productive and highly efficient and good ABA therapists. And a lot of times, all of the training articles in the past just look at taking that RBT and making their behavior as correct as possible. So whether it be through video modeling or extended shadowing or, behavioral skills training, all of these different ways. But it's very labor intensive. And that's been a lot of my struggles as a clinic manager lately, is not that I don't know how to train somebody. It's that I don't have the time to properly train them. And I can only pass along so much of my knowledge and my skills in the short amount of time that I have. And then I have RBT trainers who are very proficient, and I do rely on them a lot to train, but even they they're very busy. They have clients of their own that they need to work on. And this article really summed it up by saying the issue of training is that there are a low amount of trainers, and therefore less time can be spent implementing these training strategies. It's not the fact that we don't have strategies, because we have plenty of strategies. It's the fact that we don't have the time. There's too little trainers, so we need a strategy that operates independent of trainers. We need a strategy that just works, whether that be something over the computer or something that kind of like proceeds forward as you go. We need something that works independent of trainers. And that's what this article attempts to answer. Specifically, they're talking about discrete trial instruction. Although I'm fairly confident in saying that this training strategy could go across many different skills in ABA. And I think at least in our clinic, I'd like to apply it across many different ABA skills. Other methods of training discrete trial instructions are things like behavioral skills training, computer-based instruction, and video modeling, things I mentioned before. And the barriers is the low trainer to staffing ratios. And all of these above methods require lots of in-person, one-on-one teaching. They're just not very efficient. We need to learn how to leverage the time of our trainers so that either one trainer can train multiple different staff, which presents a logistical nightmare, or the trainers can do something once and set it up so that multiple different staff can get trained on it at different times. One answer to this conundrum of leveraging time and how to do it is to add an active response and specifically a rating scale to any staff member who's being observed, and the trainee fills out this rating scale as they watch. This is called the observer effect. Research done by Marcano, Valdesque, Reeve, and DiGerno in 2020 showed that they were able to use the observer effect, so the trainee watching another staff member and rating, to effectively teach the steps of a PSPA. However, in general, there's not a lot of research to support this observer effect, and the research that is present struggles with generalization data and a lack of data regarding the observing responses being accurate or not. Now, Marcano and colleagues in 2020 solved some of those issues, and the purpose of this study is to replicate and extend to discrete trial instruction, with the thought that if we can replicate this observer effect across multiple different research labs and clinics, then we might have a training method which really does leverage time and really leads to very efficient outcomes. The participants were 3 27 to 28-year-old people. They were all trainees. They needed to be teaching audio-visual conditional discrimination trials to kids. That was the discrete trial instructions. It was a basic DTI arrangement. So, for example, the therapist said goldfish, and the child touches the picture of the goldfish. Or the therapist says house, and the child touches the picture of a house among two other distractors, maybe a cat and a lion. All of the consumers, so the consumers in this case being the clients, although they weren't clients, they were acting as clients, followed scripts, including the occurrence of problem behavior. So the trainee would contact all possible outcomes while occurring and rating. And a non-concurrent multiple baseline design was used when doing the research project. The baseline was a review of the written protocol with all 11 steps needed. The trainee had 10 minutes to review the protocol and then was put in to demonstrate their behavior. There then was an intervention phase where the staff would watch multiple different exemplars of a correct and incorrect steps with repeated practice opportunities. So this was computer-based instruction in the sense that all of the videos, all of the learning was happening online and was happening, I guess, not live, which I think really speaks to the leveraging of time that was attempted here. You record one set of videos and you use that for all of your training procedures from then on. After the video model would play, then a simple question would come up. Was it correct or incorrect? And then it would be a question of why. And depending on the answer, they would either be re-prompted to another question, or they would have to explain why and then move on to the next one. That was all the rating scale was. It wasn't complicated. It was just seeing multiple different video exemplars and then asking them correct, incorrect, why not. Pretty simple stuff. In terms of the results, it was really powerful, really significant and strong results. There was significant improvement across all different types of discrete trial instruction. They did generalization and extension probes. So they did audio-visual conditional discrimination for their targets, and then they did a visual-visual conditional discrimination and a tact extension probe. And they found that even with those extension probes, following the Qualtrics survey and following the observer effect intervention, everything stayed at 100% for all three participants. They demonstrated using statistical analysis that it was the web-based single case design hierarchical linear model application. Ooh, that was a mouthful. That their results were statistically significant, and it was an impressive increase over baseline. It went from 0 to 60% to 100% for all participants. It was also demonstrated that once this was set up, it was a somewhat self-sustaining method. Like I mentioned before, this is an extremely time-leveraged technique. By taking the time one day to record videos, you are then able to reuse those videos over and over again for whoever may show up to training that day. One of the things that I know that I've struggled with as a clinic manager is hiring people in bulk. Everybody, you want to hire 3-4 different staff members and have them all start on the same day. But the reality of bringing in caseloads and clients and things like that is that you typically have to stagger your hiring so that you don't have 5 people you can easily train in one bulk group. Typically it's, 2 or 3 at the most. And then for me at least, it typically tends to be 1 or 2 at a time. And when it is 1 or 2 at a time, it presents a real struggle because oftentimes I'm teaching the same thing over and over again, but in different ways to different people. By recording all these videos and setting everything up ahead of time, it really presents an easy way to do this bulk training, this time leverage training, this observer effect. And this observer effect is a really efficient way to train. It was stated in this article that the entire training package was conducted in about 30 minutes, indicating that this method may be incredibly beneficial for busy clinics or when you're trying to bring on staff fast. I imagine a training over functional analyses, over PSPAs, over MSWOs, over DTI, over multiple different ABA techniques that these RBTs are required to know and learn, and then maybe having all of those completed, one every day, and then going out and demonstrating and shadowing on top of that. I think there's a lot of real efficient, there's a lot of potential here in this strategy. I also wonder, how this could be applied without videos. At my clinic where we train, we do a lot of shadowing. And I think that's pretty common throughout our field, is where we get a trainee to shadow a more experienced RBT to kind of show them the ropes. And I wonder what a rating scale would look like in shadowing. And if we could write down a rating scale for the perfect ABA clinic session, for example, if doing that rating scale over and over again with the participants or the trainees who are shadowing, if that would produce increases in behavior, I think that would be really, really interesting to see. Or maybe even, now that I think about it, maybe even doing rating scales on yourself, maybe self-management, self-rating, I think would be really interesting. So anyways, key takeaways for this short final article to end out issue number 4. Observing and recording as a training tool is incredibly valuable and powerful. And I think it needs to be added to RBT training packages. I think it's definitely going to get regular usage in my toolbox when it comes to RBT training, and I would encourage you to do the same. Analyzing training packages' weaknesses, such as a low number of trainers, is also really important to innovate and try new things. What I mean by this is that if nobody had ever analyzed the weaknesses of BST, behavioral skills training, nobody would have realized that behavioral skills training is a very time-intensive option. It's very labor-intensive. And the low trainer to trainee ratio doesn't really work in that setting. So I think that analyzing your training packages, whether you may have no training package or you may have the most efficient training package, is really important. And it's just important to think about what can be done better. And finally, for the consideration, I want to ask, are you a clinic owner, a director, a manager, a BCBA who manages a large group of RBTs? So how are you training your staff? You have to have some method of teaching. Is it efficient? Is it effective? Do you have high turnover? What is your rate of success? Are you happy with the staff you're training? And maybe it's time to evaluate that. Maybe it's time to do some self-reflection and think about why you chose the methods you chose. I know for me, when I first started training, I didn't train a certain way because it was evidence-based. I trained because that's how I was trained. You know, I was somebody who was thrown into a fire and told, or not a fire, thrown into the ocean and told to swim. And that's how I started training my RBTs. And I realized that wasn't the best method. Not for everyone, at least. So think about how you were trained. Think about if that's reflected in the way that you train now as a BCBA. And think about how that can be made more efficient. Because after reading this article, I definitely feel like my methods can be a lot more efficient personally. Everyone, that closes out another week. Happy Friday. I hope everyone has a great weekend. I'm not really sure what we're going to do next week. I'm playing around with a couple different ideas. We're out of articles in volume 54, issue number 4. I don't really want to go backwards, so I don't really want to do volume 54, issue number 3 in JABA. So I think I've been really into verbal behavior lately. So we might do some current verbal behavior articles. We might do some behavior analysis in practice. I'm even considering like a series to where we do like maybe 5 articles on a topic, or 3 articles on trauma assumed care, or things like that. And we'll see where that takes us. But other than that, I will have an episode plan out for you guys shortly, and I hope you guys tune in to see what happens when JABA in one take moves on to JABA in one take, but between article uploads. I do wait for the entire issue to be uploaded, which is why JABA has uploaded some new articles. I'm not going to cover them until the actual issue number 1 comes out, volume 55, issue number 1, so that I get my nice little pretty table of contents. I can track where I am. Anyways, have a great weekend, everyone, and I will see you all next week.